Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Super excited to have a great conversation this afternoon. I am Mike Morse. I'm the VP of Business Development here at Ingage Partners, and we are live with Ingage. From the first time that I met this gentleman, probably I would guess probably 2 years ago, I knew that I just enjoyed talking to him. Enjoyed talking to him about his career, but more importantly than that, about kind of life and the approach to it. So excited to have him on today. Brett Leonard, really appreciate you joining me for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna talk about a little bit of everything, but really focused on building a career in technology, what that looks like if folks want to get into the leadership side of things, how they would approach it. But first and foremost, want to learn a little bit more about your story. We were just chatting a little bit about it prior, but you've touched a lot of parts within development, QA, BA, product, into leadership now. But it sounds like your start in your career was even prior to that. So give us a little bit of background of where you started and how you ended up where you are now.
Sure. So I guess I'll start from the college years. So I went to uh, college in upstate New York, State University of New York, college at Oneonta.
There you go.
I majored in business economics, and I was a finance geek. So I love following the stock market. I originally thought that I would be involved in finance in some way. And incidentally, my first job out of college was with Stratton Oakmont, that famous uh, stock brokerage firm, which
Yeah.
was run by Jordan Belfort. And from there, I started out as a cold caller and I became an account executive, got my Series 7, and started to learn the business from that perspective. And after about a year, I decided that from an ethical perspective, it wasn't a match.
Yeah.
So I pivoted from that and kind of left the financial industry for a little bit, worked for a small business, uh, doing more manual labor, kind of setting up custom audio systems.
Okay.
My dad's in construction, so I always help my dad with construction. So I'm pretty good with my hands and things like that. So I was doing that for about a year, and then I ended up getting a job at Fidelity Investments, which brought
Oh.
me to the Midwest, brought me to Cincinnati,
Mm.
and I started there as a stock trader. So I was using my Series 7 to trade stocks on behalf of customers, doing option trades, fixed income trades, learned a lot about the financial industry and financial instruments and things like that. And then I moved into operations. And from there, I moved into process improvement. And that brings us to about the year 2000, Y2K. And I participated in the Y2K and operations floor, and then there was an opening in quality assurance, and that's when I began working towards IT. So I
Okay.
was originally a financial geek, became
Yeah.
kind of an operations geek, process improvement geek, and then in 2000 pivoted to IT.
Okay. What was I don't mean to cut you off because I know there's more years to come. Was computer science an option in college? Do you remember? Did you have any interest in it? Were people majoring in it at that point?
So I recall definitely computers, obviously early 90s, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So the
Big old guy.
computers that we think of today aren't the computers then. But I was always involved in computers when I think in, let's say, the late 70s. I
Hmm.
came home one day and my dad had this like contraption apart on our dining room table. And I was like, Dad, what's that? He's like, it's a computer.
That's great.
So someone had given him this computer, and he's really good at electronics. So he somehow put it together. It was a TRS, TRS Model 3, I think.
Okay.
So it had kind of like a cassette recorder that you would load the programs. And so I started learning programming a little bit on that. And but one of the things that I learned over time is that originally I thought, oh, well, if you're going to be in the computer science or you're going to be in the computer industry, you really need to be like a crazy whiz with math. Like,
Right.
right. So that's kind of like a barrier to entry. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that that's not really true. And it's certainly not true anymore.
Right.
There's so many more skills that are necessary that if you're deficient in one, you can make it up by being strong in another. So
Yeah.
computer science, I remember a lot of people were working on what they call business information systems. That
Right.
was a
Right.
big major when I went to school.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. But you still ended up in it, right? Okay. So you're doing
right,
QA process improvement at Fidelity still, right? And
right.
then what's that next stage or next move?
Yeah,
Or something.
so I was a little conflicted when I first entered into IT. I took the job because I was tired of operations and I thought,
Okay.
it was something different to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I dug into it and I started working on more projects, I became enthralled with the idea of learning more and more about tech and
Yeah.
about IT. So I deep dived into that and I went back to school. I went to UC and I took programming classes and learned systems analysis design and databases. And I really started to create a technical foundation that still serves me today.
Mm-hmm.
So worked my way through QA, worked on many, many projects, worked a variety of platforms from the
Yeah.
mainframe to voice response systems to internet. Net
Mm-hmm.
Benefits is one of the Fidelity products that I worked on. Um, and then I decided that now was the time to start looking towards leadership. So
Okay.
this is in kind of like 2005, around
Yeah.
that time frame.
Was there anything growing up or in your early career that had you already kind of identified like, hey, I enjoy the leadership part of it, whether it was a formal title or not, right? Or what kind of spurred that thought in your mind at that point that, hey, this is something I want to get into?
Yeah. So going back to my dad was
Yeah.
a self-employed businessman. So
Okay.
he was always running his own show. So I was
Hmm.
kind of like, yeah, that's like I like that. I like having
Yeah.
the independence. I like to make decisions. And even when I was on the operations floor, I was quote unquote a supervisor,
Okay.
work group leader, I think they called it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make a decision. Do I really want to be a manager here? Or
Okay.
do I want to progress to manage and lead a different function? So
Hmm.
at first it was finance. Oh yeah, I want to be a financial manager. But then
Yeah.
when I pivoted over to IT, yeah, I definitely had my eye on leadership almost from the
Okay.
beginning. I was, working in the trenches, doing the work, and then we
Hmm.
had kind of a position of QA project manager where you would manage the projects and manage all
Okay.
the. So I moved up to that, and then the
Yeah.
next step would be to become a manager.
Okay. Going back to school, kudos to you, right? You get into the programming, you're learning the databases, you invested in yourself. Was there any
Right.
formal training or was there anything you pursued that when you knew, hey, I really want to get into more leadership? Was there anything you pursued to try to elevate yourself in that way or gain some new skills that you feel like you might have not had at that point?
Absolutely. Fidelity was great with training. and I took advantage of everything I possibly could.
Yeah.
Everything I possibly could. I had a mentor, and she was a systems manager, and she was helping me along. She would open up these training opportunities for me, give me some of the proprietary training that her team was going through. So at that time, I was really a sponge. I was just soaking up whatever I could from wherever I could. And
Right.
so, I became Six Sigma certified,
Yeah.
um, because Six Sigma became big at Fidelity.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so and then I had to make my move, right? So I had to
Right.
figure out where to make my move. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that there was an appetite for more automated testing.
Okay.
This is not a new story. You probably hear this over and over and over again, right? So this is
Yeah.
in 2006. And I was trained on the application was Windrunner at the time.
Okay.
Okay, it became QTP,
Okay.
came
I've heard that.
UFT,
Yep.
right? Um, so I started working on that. I found that we had licenses available. I went to training and I started working on proof of concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And my first proof of concept worked out really well, saved a lot of time. It was a configuration application for the voice response system. And so my VP at the time, uh, he was interested, and I pitched him. I said, listen, I want to build an automation team here in Cincinnati. Of course, he was based in Boston,
Yeah.
and I'm uniquely qualified to lead it. So
Yeah. You
what one of
created
the
your own
things
role.
that so
Yeah.
what one of the things that I coach people, and what I would say to people who are listening that are looking to step into leadership, one of the things you really need to do is take chances, take risks, and be bold.
Yeah.
And this is one of the area. It's not like you have to go around every day to be bold, right? You have to pick your
Right.
spots. So
Yeah.
this was a spot that I picked, and it turned out, and he agreed with me, and that began my automation
Yeah.
journey,
Yeah. It
and we
sounds like,
started
yeah,
building a team from there.
that's fantastic. It sounds like, to your point, you were bold, but you put thought and effort behind figuring out what that would look like, right? Rather than just saying, hey, I think I deserve something else. You actually found a solution and a new technology and said, all right, I'm going to present this entire idea um, as well, rather than just, I think sometimes, and I may have even done this in my life, but felt like, hey, I deserve something else. Well, it's not about deserving. It's about creating that space and creating that opportunity. And it sounds like you did that in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The concept that I was working from is I need to do the role before I actually have the role.
Right.
So
Right.
I acted as if I was the manager, as if I was building a team. I was the only member of that team,
Yeah.
but and I was working, kind of ad hoc. Nobody was
Hmm.
telling me to do it. I didn't have a boss behind me
Yeah.
to push me in that direction. It was all
Yep.
completely self-motivated. I saw the opening and I said, this is a way that I can start, leading teams. And
Yeah.
and that worked out really, really well.
That's great. How long were you at Fidelity at that point? How many years?
Let's see, probably around 12.
Okay. And my point being, I think what I see, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but their tenure is not something you see very often in people's career anymore, right?
Right.
When they get to a certain level somewhere, they assume that they have to make a move to a completely different company before they're able to get that new position or newer salary, whatever it might be. For you, you've had long tenures. What would you, if you have any advice or any kind of anecdotes there, but like when do you know that it's time to leave to help your career move
Mhm.
forward? And when do you know that it's time to, hey, put your stake in the ground, stick around a while, and try to make something out of where you are?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer it, to be honest with you. I could give you, I'm not good at this. All right.
No, you're good,
I,
but
I
you've
don't
done
know
it.
why.
You've
Yeah.
done it.
I mean, I don't know why, but I've had the long tenures. So I was at
Yeah,
Fidelity a total of 15 years. I was
yeah,
at I Square Foot, construction software technologies for 6.5 years.
yeah,
And, I'm if it'll be I'm over 10 years now at Fifth Third.
yeah.
So
It's
So
great.
I stayed. I tend to stay long. As far as switching roles,
Yeah,
so one of the I'll talk about like at Fifth Third.
yeah.
I came in as a QA manager.
Okay.
All right. I wasn't excited about that. That was a step in the door.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. I Square Foot had just gone through a bunch of restructurings. They were they were owned by equity fund, and they were taking portfolio companies and mixing and matching and restructuring, and I
Mm,
ended up the last man out. So
okay.
um, I took the job at Fifth Third specifically as a stepping stone QA. Realized very early on that from a from a maturity perspective, their QA process could use a lot of work. So I
Okay.
started working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Started taking
Mm-hmm.
the team, started looking at how they were structuring their teams, what their teams were actually doing, and I started and also folding in the automated testing. Now, I had at the time a leader who supported me in all of that.
Okay.
All right. And what ended up happening is he ended up leaving that position, and then our group was moved underneath another group. And then I started to notice that the leadership of the other group wasn't really in sync with my ideas of how things should be
Okay.
run, modernizing the process. They basically wanted
Mm-hmm.
to go back to everything else.
Yeah.
So, and I found out who my boss's successor would be,
Yeah.
and I thought I would be better in that role. So I did another bold move right there.
Okay.
I actually went to my new leader. There was a
Yeah.
vacancy at the top between me and the senior leader. And I went to the
Yeah.
senior leader and I said, I'm the best person to run this group. I have great ideas. And she said, no.
Okay.
Like, why are you even talking to me?
Yeah.
That
But
was a
you took the
signal to
swing.
me that it was time to move on. That was a, that was a
Yeah.
signal to me that, so my advice is to have situational awareness is the
Yep.
term,
Yep.
right? You can't just focus in on your work. You have to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on around you
Good
and
advice.
whether or not those things that are going on around you are supporting your growth.
Yeah.
Once you get to a point where you feel like either you have a leader that is not supporting your growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you have leadership that is bringing things down that you don't agree with,
Yep.
right? That's the time where you start thinking, all right, is there a better way? And most people in technology, you have options,
Right. Right.
right?
If you've set
But
yourself up. Yeah.
there's risk.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
going back to being bold, you gotta make a decision. Am I going to stay in a place where I'm not being supported
Mm-hmm.
and growth isn't being encouraged? Or am I going to find some other place where,
Right.
I will be supported. And, obviously the grass is always greener. You have to be careful
Yeah.
about what you do and the steps that you take. But for me, it worked out because
Yeah.
right after that meeting, I was talking to someone and they said, "Oh, there's an opening in a group as a BA manager.
Okay.
You know, maybe you should apply." And I applied right away, went through the process, and I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been here for, I don't know, 8.5 years, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, what I keep hearing is being bold and making the ask, even if you don't get the answer that you want, right? It's better to live in the known than the unknown. And you made the ask, you didn't get the answer you were looking for. But, my original question was, how do you know? Well, the only way you can know is if you ask, and that's how you get some clarity. And I think that's fantastic. I think a lot of people are stagnant and live in this fear of, all right, if I just sit in this place and just do what I'm supposed to do, eventually they'll notice me. Well, you've got to be bold, as you
right.
said, and find a way to differentiate yourself. So, to the differentiation piece, because we're talking about it, you tell a great story. Ever since the first time I met you, I get you're very eloquent in that way. I know you did some work with Toastmasters and led like a group here locally. Has
Right.
public speaking and all of that always been something you're into? How has that helped frame your career and helped you along the way?
Sure. Well, I was reading this book called Doing Great Work. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Michael
No,
Bungay Stanier. It's a really good book. It's a
yeah,
small little pamphlet of a book, but it has these exercises in it. And
okay.
one of the exercises was it's trying to have you understand, define moments where you felt in flow,
Mm.
where you felt like the energy pumping, the
You feel
juices
locked in.
flowing,
Yep.
all
Yep.
that stuff, right? So I went through that exercise and I came up with a number of situations where I felt in flow. And it turned out that those were times when I was speaking in public
Yeah. Interesting.
or giving or in high stake meetings with senior vice
Hmm.
presidents and that sort of thing. So I started to think about doubling down on my strengths rather than trying to
Yeah.
make up for my weaknesses.
Hmm.
So I thought, this might be a strength. This is something I should probably double down on. How do I double
Right.
down on it? Well, I heard this thing called Toastmasters. Well, maybe they have a Toastmasters here. Turned out there was. So that's how I got involved in Toastmasters. And I would say that it's definitely differentiated me uh, as a
Yeah.
communicator. And regardless of whether or not I'm actually in front of a podium, in front of a crowd, you're
Hmm.
always speaking in public, like even when you're in work group meetings.
Yep.
So it's one of the pillars I think of leadership. I call
Yeah.
master communication. That's my number 4 pillar. I gave
Okay.
a presentation in Momentum. There were 3
Yeah.
pillars, and that's number 4.
Yeah. I think it's such an important piece. And, when we talk about your background and going from finance to where you are now, being able to show up in any room, to your point, a small intimate setting, that could be an interview, right? It could be a small panel, or having a bigger voice giving a presentation, whatever it might be. It is certainly a skill that some are innately born with, but you still have to sharpen it. And credit to you for going to Toastmasters and continuing to do that. I'm sure there's people out there who would listen to what you're saying and go, "Oh, I'm terrified." Right? I think they say that one of the biggest fears in the world is public speaking. Um, do you think, I guess, two-part question. One, do you think you can still be a good leader without that skill set? And if not, what advice, or how would you coach someone to kind of tackle that and at least not make it a weakness anymore? It might not be a strength, but it can't be a weakness. What would you say
Right.
to those individuals?
Yes. So common misperception is that I need to be the most eloquent speaker in order to be a leader. That it's a myth.
Yeah.
It's a myth. You can look up on YouTube, and some of the biggest leaders in tech aren't great speakers. I mean, Elon Musk, I don't think is a great speaker.
I'd agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yet he's a great technical leader. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like what I was talking about before, strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, that math was something that held me back from going into computer science because I had this misconception that it needed to be a strength. But, being able to plan, being able to envision, being able to influence people, those are other things that go into being a technology leader that are not have anything to do with math, right? So there, and certainly you have the people who are sitting in their cubes and they're scared to communicate and they don't want to speak up in meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
You don't need to be, the best speaker, but you do need to learn how to communicate beyond your team,
Right.
in order to lead. You
Makes
need to
sense.
be able to communicate to your boss. You need to be able to communicate to your boss's peers. You need to be able to communicate with the teams that are adjacent to you. It doesn't need to be completely eloquent, but the advice that I would give, and I give this advice often to the people who report to me, is if you know that you may stumble, you should prepare. You should practice.
Right.
Right? Every day, if you're looking through your calendar and you say, oh, here's a meeting that I need to lead, you should ask yourself the question, am I prepared to lead this meeting so that when people leave this meeting, they do not feel like they wasted their time? They actually spent time that was worthwhile. We actually accomplished some kind of outcome. And if you do that every single day and you say, okay, I'm looking at this meeting, I know my boss is going to be there, my boss's boss is going to be there, I'm going to need to present this slide. Prepare a script.
Yeah.
Practice in your mind. Practice with someone next to you. Those are the types of things that help you smooth out how you communicate.
Yeah.
So that's part of the advice that I would give.
I think that's fantastic. And I think maybe you have, and maybe you haven't, but I've been in those situations where I didn't do that. And man, is that terrifying to stand up. You have the slide behind you and you go, oh, I have not rehearsed what I've had to say, right? And you only have to feel that once to go, I don't want to feel that ever again. And I'm not afraid to admit I had a pretty important meeting, not more important than this conversation, but I had a pretty important meeting earlier today, and I rehearsed on the way to work today, right? I turned the music off and I just kept saying different versions of it, because to your point, when you get up there, no matter who's in the room, is it going to come across exactly as you wrote it down? No, but to have that preparation and practice and those reps, and you made a great point. I think certainly now in a time where all our calendars are full of meetings, good leaders bring value to those meetings so that people leave those conversations saying, oh, I'm glad that meeting happened, or I took something from it, or I have more direction. But to sit through a meeting, we've all been in them, where you're like, why was this called? What's the point? And you can tell that the person organized the meeting didn't prepare, and then everyone's wasting 30 minutes of time. So yeah, that's fantastic advice. I think that's great. You're on the other side now, right? I'm sure you're still, obviously you still have goals and things like that, but you manage and are helping to develop people into leaders. Is there something or a few things that you can see in people when you say, oh, that he's ready, she's ready, they're at the stage where they're ready to make the jump into leadership?
Yeah. I think there's a number of things. The number one thing that I think of is you need to learn to tell people things they don't want to hear.
Delivering bad news.
You
Yep.
know what I mean? It's not even just delivering bad news. It's just holding people accountable. I think that's a big part of the job of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are not comfortable, right? So I was just talking to someone about this the other day. I said, I want the team to feel like you're always leaning in. In other words, you're always pushing them forward and
Right.
trying to get as much out of them as possible, even more than they may even expect that they can themselves.
Yeah.
But it's a delicate dance, right? Because you don't want to create an atmosphere where everybody's afraid and everybody is working crazy hours in order to meet the
Right.
objectives. So what I told him is that what I want you to do is if there's a piece of work that needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
ask them what is a reasonable time frame for them to complete it.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yep.
then hold them accountable to that. Let them know, right? You
Yeah.
say it's going to take a week, then this is my expectation. Now, we could be flexible
Mm-hmm.
because if you find something that you don't necessarily expect, you learn something new, it's going to take longer. Okay, fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you need to kind of keep the pressure on day to day. You know, is it still a week? Is it still?
Right.
Have you learned anything? Is it going to be less than a week? Oh, that would be
Yeah.
even great, better, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's kind of like that constant nudging. I'm not talking about
Of
high
course.
pressure. I'm not talking about,
Yeah. It's
I'm
not
talking about
micromanaging, but
gentle
it's
pressure, not
right.
right. But your team should always feel like you're pushing them forward because one of my tenets of technical leadership is that what's most important is delivery.
Yep.
Delivery is most important. Everything else is just leading to delivery. And if it's not leading to delivery, then we have to question whether it's necessary to be done.
Yeah. I love that mindset. I mean, even from a sales perspective, it is the outcomes that our clients are looking for, right? Whether that be internal clients, external, whatever it might be, they're looking to make sure that the juice tastes good, right? And that's all that has
Right.
to happen. Everything that happens from before then, obviously very important. But to your point, right? It's the accountability. It's making sure we get there, not just the theory behind it. I think some people love to talk theory, but it is to your point about delivery and how can you do that. You posted a great story recently about, I think it was during an interview where someone challenged you on decisiveness, um, and kind of how you make decisions and how you approach those. How is that? And you talked about it a little bit, but I'll let you talk about it here. How has that individual challenging you kind of changed or showed up in your career?
Sure. So that was an interview that I had with the COO of I Square Foot. His name was
Hmm.
Fred Pugh.
Yeah.
Fred came from GE. In fact, Fred was like the head of one of GE's first internet companies in the
Okay.
late 90s. So he was kind of like hard nosed COO. Like the interview that I had with him was probably the hardest interview I've ever had in my career. And I told him, actually, I didn't tell him that. He overheard me talking and he actually came into the room. I was telling Henry, who was the product VP of product management, that how difficult the interview was. This was years after.
Yeah.
And Fred comes walking in the room. He overhears me talking to Henry about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Did I ask you anything that was unfair?"
Yeah.
So
Right.
anyway, in that interview, he asked me a number of things. He asked me, why didn't I go into construction with my dad?
Okay.
Right? Why do I have my GPA for this but not that?
Yep.
Different, like really little niggly things.
Yeah.
In my resume, it said, great at decision making, whatever, like that. I was kind of I was talking about my experience at Fidelity, where I was making decisions. I was autonomous. I built my own department from scratch, that automation team, and I was comfortable making decisions. And he said, I'm comfortable not making any decisions. I expect people underneath me to make decisions. So, but yes, the leadership under Fred was definitely something that impacted my career and how I think about leadership.
Yeah.
So one short story, if I could. So this is a software as a service application.
Okay.
Right? So people buy subscriptions, they expect to be able to log in and do their work, get their value. Well, we had this one release. We usually released on Thursday nights. And on Friday morning, nobody could log in. Nobody could log in all day on Friday. We set up a war room. We tried to figure out why were the servers all bogged down? What the heck was going on? Worked all through the weekend in order to get that up and running on Monday. Finally, we stabilized on Monday. Fred calls us into the room. He calls my boss. I was reporting to the CIO.
Yep.
Also the development manager. I was the QA/BA manager, our architects. And he comes into the room and he says, congratulations, you almost bankrupted the company. Now, what are you
Thanks for saving the
it?
day. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then he said, look, I've hired all of you people because you are the experts in the field. I'm not going to tell you what your solution is going to be. You're going to tell me what the solution is going to be, and I'm going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And so that was an example of how Fred ran the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it stuck with you. I love that. Right. To your point about it.
And we had to meet with him on a weekly basis. We went over the defects. We went over the release schedule. He brought up our little chart that said all the processes that we were going to do prior to release. He asked whether or not we had done them. So, but that one experience kind of matured our organization and the way we delivered software. And we got to a point, like when I first walked in there, every time we released, we had this, we called it the 911 board. We had a whiteboard and we put all the ticket numbers, and there would be like 20 ticket numbers after every single release. We got to a point where, and the sales guys wouldn't schedule appointments on Fridays of the releases because they were afraid to demo the product right after we released.
Yeah.
After a while, it became no numbers on the 911 board. Sales guys weren't, salespeople weren't afraid to demo the product on Fridays anymore. So it really smoothed out our process there.
I love it. That's a great story. Obviously you probably recognize it then, but you recognize it even more how much Fred influenced you, right? And probably helped shape you a little bit as a leader, for good and bad. I think we all have those stories of learning from all sorts of different folks. I could talk to you forever. Before we wrap up, and I really appreciate this. This was great.
Sure.
What advice would you give young Brett, just graduated from college, is not sure what's in store? What advice would you give him on career development?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned after leaving Fidelity. So what happened there? 2008 financial
Right.
crisis, 2009, beginning of 2009, they cut me and all my staff
Yeah.
and all of the IT here in the Midwest
Mm.
at Fidelity. And they gave us outplacement training.
Okay.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
look, I started at 93. I left in 2009. The whole job search market
Of course. Yeah.
changed,
Everything's changed.
right? I mean, it was just unbelievable changes. So what they suggest is you start with a vision,
Okay.
right? So they have a so if I was to go back in time, I think I had a vision, but it wasn't completely clear.
Mm.
And I don't think I had enough whys behind that vision. It was more
Right.
like I want to get my career started,
Right.
and I want to do it for an ethical company, not Stratton Oakmont, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So Fidelity was the place. So Fidelity, very ethical company, great company,
Yeah.
love them today. But I didn't know why I wanted to go to the Midwest. It
Mm-hmm.
was just an easy out,
I got a
you know.
job. Yep, gonna get a check. Let's do it.
I mean, I was working for a CPA company, actually doing sales, CPA network, and I decided I hated that job. It was
Yeah.
setting appointments for CPAs.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay, uh, so I took a day off. I went to the library. I said I need to find a job. Of course, these days, before computers, before job boards, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Business Employment Weekly, which is part of the Wall Street Journal, right? Open the first page, says, if you have a college education sales experience as a Series 7, we want to talk to you. Full page ad. I called that
Yeah.
800 number. It was Fidelity Investments. And that's
That's
how I
great.
ended up, right? But I think one of the things that you should do is really design your environment before you get there. Like, what do you want your
Really.
environment to look like? Who do you want to be working with? What types of people do you want to be working with? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be, on a team, doing product delivery, or do you want to be, you know, selling IT services and on the
Yeah.
road a lot, right? You
Right.
need to kind of design your environment and then tailor your job search towards that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I was just like, oh, here's a job. I'm
Yeah.
going to Cincinnati, going to be
Right.
independent. They're paying me enough money to get away from mom and dad.
Yep. Yep.
I didn't do any planning. I had to kind of back into it and live and learn. So, yeah, that's one of the things I would start with the vision, at least start with that, and then work towards enhancing your interview skills,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
right?
big part of it.
St-
Yep.
learn how to take some experiences that you've had,
Yep.
as minor as they may seem, and spin
Mm-hmm.
them into what we call success stories,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Situation, obstacle, action, results,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think if you do those two things, that'll get you a long way.
Yeah, I love it. My big takeaway is right. Be bold, create
Yeah,
your vision, and then learn how to communicate because you're going to come across all sorts of people, and it's important to have that skill set. So, Brett,
yeah,
I really appreciate it. This has been great. Thank you so much for joining me, and I know we'll cross paths again soon. But thank you so much for the conversation.
absolutely.
All right,
Thanks for
awesome. Have a
having
great
me.
rest of the day.
You too.
See you.